Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. An absolute pleasure to speak to you both today. How are you doing?
Good, thanks.
Well, I mean, the first season was already a masterclass in tension, but you've done it again. But of course, we've moved the action and the focus to a completely different section of the hospital, a different doctor. Maybe you just want to kick off with an intro for people coming into this second season. What can they expect? Grace, do you want to start?
Yeah, so second season, we're looking at a new doctor, Dr. James Ford, who is a psychiatrist working in North Yorkshire. And he has, as ever with Malpractice, a really, really rubbish day at work where he has two really difficult patients that he has to choose between. He maybe thinks he's made the right decision, but as things unfold, perhaps it wasn't. And then we get Norma and George coming in and slowly dismantling his life, his work, every decision it feels like he's ever made. And yeah, then we get to the heart of something else that's actually going on.
And of course, I guess when you start working on these series, you don't know how many seasons you're going to have. Did you already know where you were going to take the story, or was it after the first season finished, you then thought, right, okay, what can we do next with this?
Yeah, so I mean, when I first came up with Malpractice Series 1, there were a few different ideas that I discussed with World for what the focus of the series could be. I mean, I think it's really fortunate, having been a doctor, the way that medical training is in the UK, you go through a different number of specialties as a junior doctor. So that does mean that you've got the this sort of rich variety of areas to choose from. I think given that series 1 was set in that high-paced, intense A&E, I kind of wanted to show a completely different area of medicine. So psychiatry was the specialty that I landed in later on in my career. And yeah, I don't think it's an area that is particularly well explored on screen. So it was a really lovely opportunity to be given to focus on mental health and try and find a sort of dramatic and relevant way into that world.
And for you, Helen, coming back on board, what was it like? And how does your character, I guess, shift in her position than she was in the first season to this one?
Well, it was fantastic to come back. It's great to be something that's kind of has its finger on the social pulse, and to be able to tell stories that I suppose, particularly after the pandemic, were so relevant to everybody. Firstly, with the first series, for people to see the pressure that doctors were under. And I suppose now it's even more relevant because we're looking at the fallout mentally from that kind of time period where everybody was locked down. It's such a massive area. It's an area we still don't have great control under. I know, particularly here in Ireland, the services are absolutely saturated and people are suffering and the health professionals are suffering. So to explore that area, somewhat familiar territory for me. But I suppose Norma's angle is very different from what my angle was professionally in that area. So it's great. I think she's an advocate for the patient. She's an advocate when things go wrong. So she's very hungry for justice. I think in the second series, it's great to come back for mostly because you know your character a bit better. Always at the end of a series, you think, Jesus, I wish I could go back now, and because now I know her, so it's great to be able to hold on to her and move in and develop her. We see a little bit more of her life outside work, and how she is kind of as a human being and not just this kind of driving force for justice in the hospital within the MIU. So yeah, it's been amazing to come back and dig into that.
And of course, Neve was absolutely phenomenal in the first season, but I guess it wouldn't have made so much sense because we'd already kind of explored that character. So having Tom come in playing James Ford,
Lovely.
and I think, I guess, with the central character, like with Neves, it's like, you can see that they're obviously not making the right decisions, but their heart is in the right place. And you how that actually, he's very committed to his job, he's committed to his patients. So it's not necessarily, about villainizing anyone here. But you are on tenterhooks the whole time, almost like head in your hands, like, no, please don't make that decision. And was that quite important in the sort of creation of that central character, that you at no point were just sort of, apportioning blame necessarily, or saying that he was doing this out of any kind of, neglect, but more just showing this is a normal human being wanting to do the right thing, but just under immense amount of pressure.
Yeah, so that is kind of central theme, I guess, of Malpractice. It's these, I think doctors often are either held up as these sort of saintly figures, or it goes the polar opposite way and they're kind of demonized. And there's no kind of sort of rational middle ground, because doctors are just people, and they are people working in extraordinary situations under extraordinary pressure, and they are responsible for people's lives every single day. And humans make mistakes, and you're not going to work to try and make the wrong decision. You're balancing so many different things. And I think what series 2 does, hopefully quite nicely, that series 1 wasn't such a central theme in, is show how the system around you, you're sort of set up to fail in so many ways, and you can be trying your best within something like the NHS and everything feels against you. So where we meet Dr. Ford, he's already in a difficult situation. Psychiatry, as Helen was saying, we know mental health services across the country are falling apart, and people don't necessarily understand why. And I can understand why, because you see that there are doctors, that it's the doctor's fault that mental health services are poor. And like, we hear these awful stories of patients who haven't had the right support and they slip through the net and catastrophic things happen. But actually, they're just trying to do their best in a difficult system. And that does lead you to make some of the excruciating decisions that, you'll see him make on screen, because in that moment, he's balancing so many different things. And yeah, I wanted him not always to make the right decision, or what seems really obvious when you're not in it, because he's a lot of other stuff is going on for him within each setting.
And Tom just plays it so well. Helen, what was it like working opposite him and seeing him take on this character?
It's great when you get somebody new, because it's a whole new energy and a whole new approach. And when you read a script, you have an idea about the character, the writer has an idea, the director has an idea, the producer has input. So there's so many things, that go into making that decision. But they also have their viewpoint and their delivery, and totally changes things on set. He's consummate professional. I would say he was very entrenched in the character from the get-go. And I thought, okay, this is how we're going. And it brings everybody else in. It's really helpful to have quite a strong first footing. And he really did that. And then you know immediately where you are. And then, there'd be moments where we'd be talking in the break, but briefly. So he kind of not stayed in character a lot, but there was a lot of that division evident between us character-wise immediately. He's such a nice guy. And when we had time, I was going, oh God, he said, oh, you're a nice person. I had, yes, I'm not a bitch. I'm just doing my job, because you get so entrenched in it. And it's great to make relationships off camera, but that did not have any value for us with our dynamic. You're talking about how they're under so much pressure, and they're under so much pressure, and they have maybe seconds to make decisions, and they don't know. They're not at the top of their game. They're climbing the ladder like everybody, and there's moments where they're left to make these choices and make these decisions, and they're not always the right ones. And I think I wanted Norma to allow for that, but also she is the one that speaks for the family. She's the one that's in the mop-up, and it's important for her to be objective and not be taken in by the fact that they're under pressure. Professionally, they have a job to do. So she goes after people that make mistakes with vigor, and that's her job. But he started off on such a strong footing. He took us all with him, and it naturally developed into the great thing it becomes. But he was very professional, he was very entrenched in the character, and he really cared about it, and you could see that out of that comes the genuine, emotion and feeling that comes with being a junior doctor, and not a consultant, someone who's trying really hard. So it was, remarkable to watch and be a part of. It was great fun. Tough subject matter and all as it is. Yeah.
Well, it's going to be my next question, actually, because it's so visceral, the tension that you feel. I mean, your palms are sweating, you're sort of really on the edge of your seat. And I kind of wondered, well, maybe you did have to have that atmosphere a bit on set as well in order to be able to pull that off, which sounds like maybe there was a bit of that. Was there a particular scene that you found hardest, or when you watch it back now, do you have a scene that you think is your favorite for people to see?
All of it. I think it's difficult when you've got a fast-paced A&E. It's very easy to see the general tension. When it's slow and steady and you're looking for the psychological tension, that's harder to achieve, but it's more impactful. And I think the way it's shot, the camera kind of stays with you and stays with your emotion. It just lets you there, that extra beat that makes you as a viewer feel, oh God, when will this be over? And that really quiet, subtle, heavy way of shooting it is far more impactful and nearly feels more dramatic because of that. Scene-wise, I always find the interview stuff really interesting because there's slow beats. People are watching what they're saying. They're trying not to get themselves in trouble. How can I limit, have damage limitation here on what I've done, or what or what way I want to play it. So the interview scenes are always really interesting to me. There's lots of stuff, obviously, that happen outside that I come in afterwards. So I'm dying for people to see all of that stuff. I mean, all of it. That's my answer. All of it. It's all brilliant.
And for you, Grace, I mean, I guess when you have these images in your head of, how the actor's going to take on the characters and how the scenes are going to play out and, which the most tense moments are going to be, is the final product very different to that? Do you sometimes have surprises? What was it like seeing these actors take on your characters?
I mean, the cast is phenomenal. I think, see, we've got new cast this time, and without any spoilers, there are certain scenes within the hospital in episode 1 which are inspired by, circumstances that I've been in, that are common circumstances that happen within psychiatry and medicine, that I think in your training, you sort of, I don't know how, you numb yourself to what you're facing when you're in it. So when I went to set, we had this fantastic director for Block 1, Anthony Phillipson, and coming into the hospital set for some of the really tricky scenes that you see in episode 1 made me feel so stressed and took me right back to being the equivalent of Dr. Ford in a way that I was not expecting. I couldn't really, kind of understand how, as a much younger doctor, I had been able to come to work and do those on-call shifts day after day after day, when with a bit of distance and working in TV, being on set and having it recreated. I mean, it's just a testament to how incredible the cast, the crew were at understanding the emotional kind of and psychological journey that patients and doctors go through in those very tense moments. I thought, I found it really, really hard actually to be on set for some of those scenes. And we had great people on set who would do debriefs with me. It's like they were there mainly for the cast, but I was the one who needed this emotional support afterwards because they created something so true to life. So I hope, when you're writing it, you don't really, because it's so based on stuff that I know, I'm always thinking, is this dramatic? Will people find this interesting? I know that it's stuff that people don't necessarily see very often in terms of things that go on in hospitals, so they might find it interesting from that point of view, but will they find it tense? And as you say, that sort of thrillery, anxious ride. So I think hopefully we've achieved that. And my own distress in seeing it filmed is probably testament to to that.
Ultimately, in terms of the takeaways, I guess, first and foremost, the entertainment value is 100% there of it being this kind of tightly wound medical thriller. But as we've discussed, there's so many other things that are raised by kind of putting the spotlight, I guess, more on the system than necessarily just the individuals or just the work in a hospital is going to make people reflect a bit. And as we say, post-COVID, is the system able to cope with the demand? Are these human beings doing their best, being given the tools they need to be able to do their jobs properly? And I guess it really humanizes those people. We might put them on a pedestal, or we might be unnecessarily critical of doctors in their positions. And it's, maybe going to make people be a bit more empathetic that they are just doing their best. So what do you hope that people will take away from watching the show?
Yeah, I hope, that doctors, they are doing a job where they want to help you. They aren't trying to be obstructive. They're just doing their best. They are working in a very difficult system, often without the resources that they need. And, they've gone through all this training and sacrificed quite a lot. And it's not the glamorous world. I think there is this impression that doctors are earning vast sums of money. Obviously, we've had all the strikes and things. But what you see in this show, this is just a regular shift, and you have to get up and you have to go back in and you have to keep going. What seems like quite an extraordinary day. And in the making of it, when I was writing it at first, I was trying to show so many other things that he's doing during that shift, because I'm like, this is the reality of it. But people are like, no, that's just too much. There's too much going on. Let's just have just even this small slice of what a shift is like, I hope will demonstrate that, doctors really are trying their best on the whole, and it's a often impossible situation that they're working in.
And for you, Helen, what do you hope that people will take away from watching this season?
To echo that, it's the expectation that's on doctors, that's on nurses. I spoke about this a few weeks ago. Once you put on a uniform, people think you have the answers. Every doctor and nurse and medical health professional is an actor. They're acting like things are okay when they're not. They're in these profoundly difficult situations with no time and no resources, working extra shifts if somebody else doesn't show up. You're at your end, you're exhausted. And the reality is that you do have other things going on in your life, and you have to park them when you go in the door. But some of those things seep in and they affect, how you are and the decisions that you make. And I think we're very quick, as a society, we're very quick to judge when things go wrong. Because of social media, we're very vocal about that. So you can be under attack from many levels. And I think, shows like this, and the point of this show for me is to show the humanity that these are flawed human beings, that they're doing their best in a broken system. But I think for people to sit back and go, to see a doctor make a wrong decision and to say, God help him, and not go the villain, to actually have empathy and feel they're doing their best, to be able to show medical professionals in that light will help the public to understand that it is not a job that everybody can do. It takes extraordinary resolve, knowledge, patience, heart, mental strength, because you see, sometimes somebody dies on a ward, and if it's your first death you experience as a nurse or a doctor, you have seconds, and then you have to clear out the bed and get the room ready, and because there's somebody else coming. And when Grace was talking about looking back at that traumatic scene, it's because you compartmentalize in a way, because you've got no choice. Nobody says, come on in here, sit down, have a cup of tea. Are you okay after that really traumatic event? And Grace talks about writing these things and thinking, God, that doesn't seem like drama, or it doesn't seem like high octane. But to the lay person, to cope with what doctors cope with on a daily basis, it's all completely dramatic. It's, to land somebody in who doesn't know that system and go, fix everything here, don't make any mistakes, and also be nice to the public. And, there's so much at stake. I think what this show does really, really well is say, hi, this is a human being, you know, and please have sympathy, please have empathy, please don't judge. They're doing their best. I mean, it's echoing what's been said, but it's so important. And I think that showed us this really, really well.
100%. Well, so well put. And just very quickly, is there going to be a season 3? We don't know yet.
Don't know yet, but
yes,
we hope so.
Season 6.
I think so. I think this is so many more different sections of the hospital and medicine, so much more to explore. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that with me. Huge congratulations on another incredible season, and I can't wait for everyone else to see it.
Thank you so much.
So nice to chat to you. Thank you. Bye.